Hi everyone, good morning. First of all, thank you so much for taking out time and joining the call. I know it's a Saturday morning. Uh, Ankit already introduced me, so I do work for AWS India. I'm based out of Hyderabad, but I have spent most of my life in West Bengal. I am from West Bengal, so very happy to be here with this meetup group. I have joined and been with AWS for 1.5 years as of today. And my primary focus area of work within AWS is currently AIML, especially with developer experience, developer productivity. Hence, I have been working a little bit with Kiro, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to show you guys what the tool looks like, what you can do with this tool, and of course, have a discussion on Kiro. So, let me just quickly share my screen. Before I share my screen, so I just wanted to check. How many of you are students? You can just put it on the chat if you're a student. All are working professionals, is it? Is everyone sleeping? Okay, never mind. Why I asked that question is so that I'll try to keep in mind that what kind of audience we have. Are most of you working with organizations or you are a student? But anyway, let me just go ahead and share my screen. And if someone can confirm that my screen is visible. All right. So what we're going to look at today is something called spec driven development, and the tool is called Kiro. Now, before I go ahead and talk about what Kiro does, different features of Kiro and how you can benefit from it, what I do want to emphasize is that all of this new changes, new services that you might be seeing with developer productivity, and not just in developer productivity, but in general, when you think that, okay, something that increases your efficiency, productivity, all of this is coming from the advancements in the field of AIML, especially with generative AI that has taken up quite a fast pace in the last couple of years, I would say. Especially from 2022 2023, we have seen a lot of changes coming in. Even if you are an individual, even if you're an organization, you definitely want to go ahead and see the possibility of what can be done, what you can inculcate in your current workflows. And of course, this can be divided into two major categories. So one is, of course, that you might have seen with the different generative AI tools that are already available in the market as of today. ChatGPT is a great example. I'm pretty sure most of you have already used it. So you just go and ask for something, summarization, explain something, maybe share a difference between two things, generate images. So these kind of things have been there for quite a good number of months right now, and I know that you have definitely exploded. The other area where this also comes in as showing a lot of use cases or being very very helpful is the software development field, where there are so many different things that a software developer does. When we think of a software developer, we say, okay, that person writes code, but that's not the only thing. Even if you're a student, especially when you are a working employee in an organization, either you're building a project from scratch or you might be working on a project which has already been there for quite some time. So basically that means that you have to understand what that project does. You might have some documentation, but the documentation might be good, it might not be that good. Sometimes people don't document a lot of things, it's very high level, it doesn't go in depth. It's a problem that lots of organizations face as of today. Second thing is that when you are actually building a product, you would not just put it into production, or you're not going to have a live version out of it into the world without actually testing it. That's where your unit test cases, your security tests, all of these matter. And of course, you are not working individually on projects, you're going to work as a team. Someone would be building feature X, someone do feature Y. So basically that should be a documentation, unit test cases, review of that code, understanding whether this code has good quality or not just in terms of checking whether it's secure or not, but also the code quality. Now I'll just show you what are the different problems that developer face today. So one of the things which is very very common, and I have also seen this a lot in my case, and of course when I work with customers as well, which is the unclear requirements. So sometimes, someone will come and tell you that, hey, I want to develop this, but there is no exact understanding of how this should be built and what exactly is needed. Someone says, okay, I need a feature on the website which does X, but how do you reach to that point? What does your project do currently, and how does that integrate with the current setup? That becomes a challenge. Second thing is a lot of time you waste on debugging. Well, something is there, and this you will also see, when you do the vibe coding. So you just give your AI tool some kind of requirement that why don't you go ahead and build this for me? Probably if you have used AWS, you can just say, okay, build me a three-tier application, etc., etc. Maybe just build me a host a website on S3, but you're not really specifying anything. So basically, what the model that you are using for developing the code, whatever it has learned, based on that, it's going to give you something very generic in nature. And there's a quite a big possibility that when you start deploying this, you might see a number of problems, not because there's a syntax error or the code doesn't work, but maybe it doesn't match what you had in mind because you never specified what you were looking for, right? So that means that once, even though the code is there, you are spending a lot of time going ahead and debugging it, trying to fix it, solve it, resolve all a number of problems. So in the end, while generative AI is helping us uh, increase our productivity, save time, but in again, when you do these kind of use cases, there's always a chance that you're wasting more time rather than being productive. Poor documentation, this is a very very common problem. So it could be in multiple ways in which the documentation is poor. One thing, of course, yes, you have been given a code base to work on, and someone developed this code probably 3 years, 4 years, 10 years back. It could be a legacy code base, and documentation is there, but it's basically not telling you really what is happening in this code, and you have to spend a lot of time figuring out. Today we have generative AI tools which can do this for you. And of course, if you're starting something from scratch, you can always go ahead and tell your AI tool that, okay, create the readme file for me, and write the documentation very well. But what again comes as a challenge is codes are not static in nature, right? So you're going to add more features, you're going to change so many things, and you have to keep on updating the documentation, which means that even if I'm using generative AI, I have made changes today, I've added the documentation, it's a new version of my code that actually works. When the next 6 months I'm going to have more changes, and if I've not documented them, it means that someone, if looks at this code today, they're looking at the change or the documentation which was created 6 months back, which is not updated. Second, the next thing is that there are a lot of repetitive coding tasks. So documentation is again one of them, which you have to keep updating as soon as you're making changes to the code. But there are so many other things, right? For example, unit test cases. As soon as you're adding a new feature, you should always go ahead and add a new unit test case into your code, which will be pretty much essential. So you cannot go and put something in production or put something in a live as a live version out in the world until you're pretty much sure that, hey, these things work. So that's all something that you have to manually trigger. While you can use generative AI, you can say, hey, go ahead and write the test cases for me. You have to do it manually. You have to tell someone that, hey, do it for me. And of course, because of that, you have the test coverage gap, and then the code quality also gets compromised because every time you're writing a new prompt. So whatever I'm discussing at this point, nothing is manual, right? So you're using already existing generative AI tools, but I'm just telling you the problems which are there with the existing generative AI tools as well. Manual, of course, yes, you would have all of these problems, but you would see the code quality. So you are using some prompts, add this feature for me. It's using a general knowledge that it has, and based on that, it's writing the code for you. Tomorrow, you give this code to someone else, they write a prompt in their way, and you would not see a consistent code quality in between the different iterations that a product or a project has gone through. So these are the common problems which we have started seeing even with the generative AI space being in the market and helping us being more productive. So that's where the idea of Kiro comes in, because the interesting thing about Kiro is that you can do something called a spec driven development. And of course, I'm going to show you what that means. I'm going to show you a demo as well. But what this essentially means is that rather than, again in Kiro, you have a spec mode and a vibe mode as well. But rather than letting the AI, the generative AI model in the backend that's running to decide each and every step for you, you being just minimally involved in that process, saying that, okay, I just need this feature added, you get to see the subtasks, and you, of course, go from the requirement to actual implementation in steps. And there are certain nuances around this as well, that how you can go ahead to that. I'll show that in demo as well. But yeah, essentially that's what Kiro helps you in doing. And as you can see with Kiro, how do you get started? So it's an agentic ID. I'll explain what that means as well. What I wanted to show in this screenshot or in the slide is that there are different ways in which you can interact with Kiro as of today, or you can log into Kiro. So you don't really need an AWS account. You can sign in with GitHub, you can sign in with Google. If you have a builder ID, that's great. And if you have Identity Center, that's the last option, which you see organization identity. So multiple options that you can use. AWS account is not necessary. You can just go ahead and download and start using Kiro. Now, one thing we of course mentioned here is that, hey, it's an agentic IDE. What we have seen in the last couple of months, that rather than having very static way in which we interact with generative AI models or tools, concept of agents have taken a lot of pace. And why agents have taken a lot of space, because pace, because if you go into any of the AI models or any tools that you have in the market today, right, you write a prompt, and either it and again, prompt engineering is a very vast topic, I'm not going to go into that, but you basically ask it to do something and it does that for you, right? So you go and tell that, oh, write me a code for this, or summarize this email maybe in 5 bullet points. Sometimes in first attempt you get the exact kind of response you need, or sometimes you have to do like different iterations. But even if I look at this, in a broader aspect, all of this is very static in nature. So you actually go and tell the tool, do this, do this, do this, and it's going to do exactly as needed. But what we have now seen a shift coming into the market or in the industry is agents. Agents basically behave autonomously. You define what an agent does, it's what action it's going to take. But rather than asking you for every specific input, it understands what exactly is needed and it does that for you. I'll give you a very very simple example. When you, at least in terms of software development, if there is an agent that can write the documentation for you, you would not need to tell it that, hey, look into file number X or this file, go into this directory, then look into this, then write it in this format. Usually you've seen, if you've seen GitHub samples, not just from AWS but from anywhere in the world, there are readme files which basically explain. First there would be a summary of what that file or what the project does, how it is implemented, how you can deploy it in your environment. So there are a couple of sections. When you have an agent, the agent knows that when you ask it to write a documentation, it understands that, okay, when someone says documentation, write all of these things in that one workflow. And this can be corresponding, this can be correlated to any of the things in software development: writing test cases, reviewing the code, creating something new. So rather than making it being more static in nature, having a lot of back and forth with your AI tool, agents make it more simple. Now there are different ways in which you can create your own agents as well, but we are not going to go into that. Maybe that's a discussion for some other day. Right now what I wanted to tell you is that Kiro has that feature inbuilt. It's an agentic IDE. So when you ask it to do a couple of things for you, you don't have to do a lot of back and forth. It understands that if you're asking for a documentation, what that means. And rather than having a lot of human in the loop, well, there can be a human in the loop. If you want to give it feedback and regenerate something, you can do that. But it's more like it's making the process a much more faster. And yes, you can have that workflow end to end deployed without making it that much time consuming. So, coming back to spec driven development, this is what we have been speaking for quite some time, that hey, you can have spec driven development with Kiro. So, what spec driven development basically means, that when you go ahead and develop something in your code, right, you forget about the fact that we have generative AI. Now, take it back like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years back in the line, when we were not using any of the generative AI tools. You sit in a meeting with 5 people, and someone would tell you that, hey, this is a feature that we want to develop. Even in your major project, minor projects in your universities, you sit with your team. Probably there would be one mentor who is a teacher basically, and tells you that, hey, this is a project that I want you to work on. You give them something and they said, okay, this looks good, but probably you should have this particular feature added to this. The traditional way in the human mind would think that, okay, how does this integrate with my current project, which basically makes you break down that into certain different steps, right? Basically, if you see what it mentions on the screen as well, so it's a systematic approach rather than just giving it one generic idea and it just develops something based on what it knows, its knowledge. So what you do is you refer to your existing code. What is the style in which you have written your code? What a different technology you have used? Technology could be language, the test frameworks, any other thing, supporting dependencies, libraries that you have been using in your code, which is the way in which you have designed your code so far. the way you're writing your APIs, the way the microservices are integrated. If these terms are not familiar to you, that's absolutely fine, because when we do the demo, a lot of these things will become much more clear. But basically, when you define a spec, now spec is basically in simple terms, it's a feature. I can say that, okay, look at this website. Currently, there is there is no button to search. So for example, it's a catalog of products. It could be something like Mintra.com. But in Mintra, you have a search option, right? So if I want to go ahead and say I want to look for a jeans, it will give me the results for all the jeans. If I want to look at shirts, again, there is a men, woman, that kind of category as well.
Yeah, Kanai is having some question, Pallavi. He
Mm-hmm.
raised the hand.
Yes,
Yeah, Kanai, over to you.
Hi,
yeah,
Kanai.
thank you, Ankit. Yeah. So Pallavi, I would like to understand, how Kiro is different versus any standard ID having Amazon Q developer, right? Because
Okay.
typically Amazon Q developer also provides such capability where you can create a documentation, you can review your code, create a code. So I'm just trying to understand how is it different versus the Visual Studio
Right.
having Amazon Q developer.
Right. So first of all, Kiro is a ID on its own. It's not an extension that you would have in VS Code versus what you see Amazon Q as of today in the market. You have VS Code, you have JetBrains, you have Eclipse. You add it as an extension, and then you invoke it probably with a slash command. And I think now the slash commands are also not needed. Kiro is an ID on its own. You have, and I'll, when I walk through a couple of more slides, I show the demo, then you see the differences. Spec driven is the biggest one. Then we have something called agent hooks. So normally, even in VS Code, when you are using Amazon Q, say you ask it to develop something for you, maybe you do the slash dev and it develops something for you. Does it update the documentation for you? No. Does it write the unit test case for you? Of course not. But here you can have something called agent hooks. As soon as you save a file, you give it 10 steps that anytime I'm saving a file, anytime I'm modifying a file, you go ahead and update the documentation. You go ahead and write that unit test cases for me. So everything is updated without you having to, go and do it every single time. What we are also going to see eventually, we have something called steering documentations. So basically, when you interact with an IDE in VS Code with Amazon Q, now Amazon Q does it. I'm not saying that Amazon Q doesn't do it, but it does it up to a certain level. What we provide here is something called steering document, as I mentioned, which basically defines how this project has been created, different tech, what exactly goes into this project, and then any single thing that you go ahead and deploy after that. It's a new feature, it's a fix that you want to apply. Everything follows that same format without you having to tell that in each and every prompt that do it in this way, write it in this way. Correct. So you would have seen that happening, that after a certain point of time, or even when you're interacting with any of the AI tools in the market, or IDEs, you have to specify that, okay, do it in this format or do it in this fashion. That's what you will not need to do. And of course,
Okay.
that will become much more clear when I show the demo of
You.
Hero as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, spec driven development, where uh, so basically, as I was saying, that think of this in a traditional environment, that you would do the designing, then you would basically figure out what are the requirements, and then you go ahead and execute the task. Usually with the existing tools, or the way you must have, I'm pretty sure with whoever does software development has used any of the tools or maybe multiple tools. You go ahead and tell that, hey, do this feature for me or apply this feature for me. It might give you some context at what it is doing, but it's not that extensive in nature. And again, it always does not look into what your project is doing. You might have to do certain iterations, that, hey, I'm using this stack, I'm using this technology, I'm using this test framework. Go ahead and look into that. So that's where spec driven development comes into picture. But as you can see on the slide as well, you break down your requirements, you build the design docs, and you track the implementation as well. Was there any other question?
Yeah, I think Somadipta has raised a hand. You can go ahead, Somadipta.
Hi Pallavi. So basically, I have a quite significant query to you, that how we can integrate the Kiro with any client repo. I mean, so let's say for example, I have a client repo A, which I already invoked in Kiro ID.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how the things will work, and uh, means is it act like a code suggestion, like means like let's say uh, I have Python code in that particular repo.
Mhm.
So means is that looks like. And my second thing is that means a month back I applied Kiro, but it's still in wait list.
Okay.
So when actually we will get with familiar of Kiro.
All right. No, both very good questions. So my one question to you: have you used VS Code?
Yeah, VS Code is my daily application.
All right. If you have used VS Code, you would have absolutely no challenge, no issues in using Kiro, because it's pretty much what VS Code does, and you can have some quick steps to migrate from VS Code to Kiro as well. I'll show that, and I'll of course share the documentation as well, where the step-by-step details are also mentioned. So it's pretty much like that. So whatever you do in VS Code, how you do it today, the same process would be applicable with Kiro as well. The second thing is that I know this is a common problem. You're not the first one asking this question. A lot of people are waitlisted at this point, and that's because the queue for people wanting to access and use Kiro has been unprecedented compared to what was expected. What I know at this point is that the internal folks are trying to expedite this at their pace. They're giving out the access in batches. When would you get it? That's something that honestly I have no idea, but it should be in the next couple of weeks or months max. So yeah, just keep waiting. I know this is a common question, not just from you, but a lot of other people are asking this question. Not just in meetups, but even our customers. Lots of people are waiting because, as you see, when you go to the website, you see there's a wait list. So if you have registered some time back, chances are that you might get it much sooner. So how long back did you join the wait list?
I joined as far I recall, it's a month back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an exact date that I can tell you, or ETA, but it should be soon. I think what I know is that they have started rolling out the accesses, so it should come. It should come soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So this is one of the things that I was trying to explain earlier, that usually when you interact with any of the other AI tools, one thing that's common, that hey, you have made a change, but then with that change you also need to do corresponding activities which you again trigger manually. So when you save a file, or maybe you have made a change, you have created new files, you want to update the documentation, right? That okay, I've created a new feature and there's a new directory or new features, or probably unit test cases were not there. Now you have created a new directory for a unit test case, be it Python, be it Java, irrespective of that. And now I want to probably update the documentation. So once your unit test cases are added, you go ahead and write a prompt that hey, can you update the documentation? With agent hooks, the great thing is that anytime a specific event happens in your ID, common events could be saving files, creating file, deleting files, and these are some things that you are already doing. This is nothing new, there's no rocket science behind this. You can have hooks where it can go ahead and execute some steps for your IDE, for your code base, without you having to invoke something. So that's basically a trigger, that you have saved a file, you have created a new file, and it's going to uh, go ahead and take those actions for you. So couple of examples that I can give you with this, which you must be familiar with. So one is the test case generation. So as soon as you save a file, if your trigger is saving a file, Kiro will just go ahead and create the unit test cases so that that coverage is 100% or full, rather than it leaving out that new feature that you must have added into your code recently. Again, one example could be the document synchronization, which I've said multiple times, right? So you go ahead and change something in your code. Now it could be a new feature, it could just be you changed the way in something was working, without going into something very specific, because I know there will be people using different languages and different frameworks. So anything that you have changed, maybe you updated a version even, right? So there again, the documentation can go ahead and get updated on its own. One other things that you usually do is this pre-commit scan. So in case you are working in an organization, you would know that anything that you put into production, you'll have to do something like SAST, DAST, SCA. Essentially, what that basically means, you'll have to ensure that your code is not vulnerable in terms of security. So you're not using any hard-coded credentials. You don't have any dependencies or libraries which have some vulnerability. There might be a newer version of it. So all of these things can be added into an agent hook based on what you want to do and what you have been doing regularly. Now you could have a different way of doing things than person X, but you can define this in a hook, and as I said, it will get automatically invoked every time this any of these events. And of course, you can have events based on what you want to do. Yeah, and it can take that action for you. Then we have something even more interesting, which is called steering. And this is what I was trying to mention when someone asked me that what is the difference between Kiro and Amazon Q. So what happens, this is something that we'll generate and we'll see as well in our demo. We have something called steering. Now, this is a mechanism in your IDE where what the IDE or what Kiro is going to help you in doing, it's going to ensure that every single time you interact with Kiro, you ask a question or you ask it to change something for you, add a new feature for you, there is already a memory or an intelligence or a knowledge with Kiro that what your project does, how it does it, and what are the different technologies that it is using at this point. And why this will help, because so that you never take or you don't deviate from that one standard that your code was using. One of the common problems that we see with generative AI, because generative AI is a probabilistic uh, kind of model, right? So if even if you go and type, ask the same question to chat GPT or any other thing in the market today, if you ask a question, what is Apple, will you get the exact same response every time? Meaning could be same, the semantic meaning that what Apple is as a fruit is, that will always be same, but what will not be same is the words it has written. Which basically means that if you are very generic in nature and asking that, hey, can you fix this for me, can you write this code for me, then it's always going to be different responses in different styles, because generative AI is probabilistic in nature. So based on the probability, even if you write like one sentence, you see, right, how it basically does the streaming. When you ask a question, you don't get the response back at a go. I'm pretty sure you have seen this and noticed this. Go to Perplexity, go to Chat GPT, you ask a question, you will see that answers are coming like one by one in different lines. There's a stream of answer that's coming, and that's because it takes the probability, right? So what is the probability of the next word? Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that if you do not have something of this sort enabled or defined somewhere, basically a central part saying that this is what my code does, this is how I want to design things, and these are the different tech stack that I'm using, there's a possibility that you might get very differing answers when you are writing a prompt and you're trying to enable something, disable something, create something. And it makes it very difficult for you in the end of the day to have that one common code quality. And things can look very different for very different people, and then you might have that problem where you have to debug. It's not exactly debugging, but yes, let's call it debugging just for this conversation, where you have to like bring it into that one format, and you want to make sure that your code is readable, the format is common, and yeah, everything basically matches to the way that. And usually organizations will always have some kind of coding standards. So if you just keep pushing something randomly, it's not going to work. Maybe a senior developer or the principal developer will say that, hey, I'm not going to approve this because this doesn't match the standard that we want to have in our code. So that's where steering documents or steering gives you the flexibility. Now, when you invoke the steering comment or ask it to create the steering documents for you, it's going to create three things, three MD files basically. So one is the product MD file, which basically will explain what this product does, what are the core features. If it is, say, for example, something like Mintra.com, right? So who is going to be the end user? Well, people probably in India who want to do, buy fashionable clothes. That could be basically your target user, and it could be people from different age groups, different genders, things like that, right? Then you'll have another file which is called the tech.md file, which is going to define the technology stack, the coding conventions, the standards, how you're writing your APIs, things like that, right? So basically anything that defines your tech stack. And then you'll have something called structure.md, which is basically the way in which you have organized your code in the different directories and different files and naming conventions. Naming convention is also so important. I mean, these things are probably, when we speak about it, it sounds very, very simple and very trivial. But when you actually start writing code, you have to push it, and someone has to approve it. These small things matter a lot, because the documentation, if you're just using a traditional AI tool, or if it's manual, in the end of the day, if you have like 50 different naming conventions, that's not a good practice. So all of those things are generated in a steering document, and that's where the magic happens. That next time when you ask it to write something for you, the steering document will be used as a reference, as the model's information, or basically adding on to that intelligence that generative AI brings into the picture. And every single time that something new gets developed, the steering document will be helpful. And then you have the integration with MCP. If you're not familiar with MCP at this point, right, I can give you very simple. So I don't want to go too much into what MCP is, what MCP does. The idea is that, hey, you can have the MCP integration in Kiro IDE as well. But if I'm giving you a very simple example, right, that why MCP is important and how MCP works, that imagine you have to make a dish, right? So it could be any dish, it could be biryani, it could be anything. And all of the ingredients that you are using, right, are now stored in different places. So for example, some ingredient is in the fridge, some is there in the kitchen, some probably, if you have like your own garden, you might want to pick something from the garden. If you did not have MCP, which is the model context protocol, this came last year in November by Anthropic. So what exactly would happen if there was no MCP? You would need different methods, different ways in which you can communicate with all of these different places from where you have to pull the ingredients. But MCP basically acts as that one universal way in which you can access all of this, so all the APIs, the tools. So basically, rather than you have to design one process to pull something from kitchen, one process to pull something from fridge, one something from garden, one something from probably Blinkit or Zepto, one standardized way in integrating all these external services, API tools, and making it easier for you to go ahead and get that specialized answer back from your generative AI tool. Maybe we can have another conversation someday on MCP, because I've explained in a very, very rudimentary way. There's a lot of different things, like how do you manage the memory, how do you basically create your own MCP servers as well. But yeah, discussion for some other day. And this is the pricing for Kiro as of now. So it comes in couple of different tiers. This is as of, so we had some changes with this, but I think this is the latest information. So there is a free Pro Plus, and power version, and there's a trial version as well. But as you can see, it's basically, as I said, there's a vibe and spec mode. We are going to focus on spec mode as of today. But when you start using this, based on these, you would have different usage capping. So trial might have like 100 vibe requests, 100 spec request. If you are having the power, which is the highest tier, you would have this many numbers of vibe request and spec requests as well. Okay, and this is another. So is there a question from someone? Yeah, please ask your question.
Yeah, so Pallavi, just one thing that means Kiro means Kiro is going forward offering anything for let's say enterprise or means developer uh, means enterprise developer AWS accounts means for the enterprise means Kiro will automatically means covers each and every feature like that means do you have anything any insights regarding this?
So as I said, Kiro is a completely different tool, and it doesn't need for you to have an AWS account at this point. So even if you are someone who just wants to, install Kiro, just like you would install VS Code, right? Do you need an AWS account or anything other dependency to download it? No. It has its own pricing, its own way in it works, and that's what I was showing earlier, that there are different number of requests that you can make based on the tier that you subscribe to. Pricing would be different as well. But yeah, that's how it is. I mean, it's completely different. Even if you have an AWS account and you want to log in through your AWS account, there's a way to do that through Identity Center. But it's a completely different tool or a service like you would see in AWS as well. But AWS accounts or having the AWS usage is not a prerequisite. You can still
Okay,
use it without that.
okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, so that's what I wanted to mention, that VS, if you're using VS Code, and I can, of course, towards the end of the session, I can give you some documentation pages as well, where you have the step-by-step process on how you can do the migration. But since Kiro is built on the VS Code open source foundation, as you see on the screen as well, it's basically very, very easy to, have the transition from VS Code to Kiro. And while you do that transition, right, so any personalized setup that you might have done with VS Code, as one of you mentioned, right, so you have been using VS Code daily, so you might have extensions, Docker extension, npm, etc., etc. All of those things you can easily transfer from VS Code to Kiro. So it's a seamless transition for you. You would not, as I said, if you have been using VS Code, you would not have any difficulty or any challenges navigating around Kiro. All right, so let me just stop sharing my screen. Let me reshare my screen and I'll show you what Kiro looks like. I hope my Kiro screen is visible. Perfect. All right, so this is what Kiro looks like when you open the IDE. As you see, multiple options here. I'm not sure if you have already seen some demos from, there's a lot of demos that has been shared. But as you can see, I did not do the VS Code to Kiro migration, but I have my Amazon Q extension added here as well. I did work with Amazon Q extensively. I did like this a lot. So I wanted to have that extension. And if you look at the interface, it looks, I mean, would you have any difficulty or any challenges if you have VS Code? I don't think so, because I personally did not feel any. It was very, very easy to use. Couple of other features or new features that are present here, which you basically have to understand and know what they are. And then it makes it easier for you. So what I've done is I've added one code base here, and let's think of this as, right, that you and I both are clueless on what this code actually does. We don't know. So it would be a great point for us, or great starting point for us to figure out, okay, what should we do, uh, basically what we should go do and go ahead, if you want to add new features to this code. So first thing that I'm going to do is, general communication that you can have. I'll just show you those as well. So probably I can just say that, okay, can you tell me what my current, probably that is just answer. And this is something that has already been there with other tools as well, nothing new. But it basically tells you what are the files it's going to read. And till the time it goes ahead and reads this, probably I can give you very small feedback on what this code base actually is. So if you have played games like Wordle, which comes in New York Times, it's basically a word guessing game. So it would be a 6-letter word. You have to guess what game the word that is. If you put in a word, if it is in the correct, the letters are in correct position, it tells you. That's what you see here being marked as green, yellow, red. So if the correct letter is in correct position, you get a green. If it is the correct letter but in wrong position, it's yellow. And if the letter is not in the word, so it would be marked as red. For example, if the word is something like, so let's take my name for example. If the word is Pallavi, that is the exact word that you have to guess. But you write something like some other name, and that name has a letter like Q, then Q will come as red, because in Pallavi there is no Q. But if you slide the word I in the starting, it will come as yellow, because the word I is there in Pallavi, but the location is not the first. It's not the first letter, it's the last letter. And of course, green basically means that the letter is also correct and the position of the letter is also correct. Now, what we are going to go ahead and do is, before we go ahead and start adding any new features, asking Kiro to set something up, we can just say that, or rather we can just not write it here, we can just give it a second. So basically what I'm doing here is, okay, so what I've pressed here is Command Shift P, and if you see, there is a lot of different options with Kiro that will come here. We don't want to look into lots of different things, but I'm just going to call the setup steering for project and let it run. So this is what exactly we want our first point of entry while using Kiro should be, because that's exactly what will be used in each and every communication that we have with Kiro at a later point. So we'll let it execute. let it create the steering documents for us. Give it a few seconds here. While it does this, any questions from anyone so far? Anything that you want to ask?
Yeah, I have a question. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
while this is doing so, I think you do not need Q developer, right? I think as you have shown, you already have Q extension, Q
Yeah,
developer extension, but you can still, without using Q developer, you can continue to have Kiro's own proprietary such tool, right? I mean, this chat window
absolutely,
for the
absolutely.
similar things.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. You can still go ahead and use this. So right now, if you see, it has started creating that product.md, tech.md, and structure.md file, which basically, as I said, would be an additional intelligence on top of all the prompts or all the communication context that you would have with Kiro when you go ahead and start adding something. All right. So what we can do is we can just open the product.md file, and if we can see what it basically tells us, that keywords is a web-based word guessing game similar to Wordle. You have 6 attempts to guess randomly selected work, receiving feedback after each guess. These are the feedbacks. And the game uses session-based state management and provides a simple web interface for gameplay. Very simple explanation, but really makes me understand what this does. Next is the tech stack. So, what are different core frameworks, dependencies, front end testing, and of course, the common commands that you might be using to build and run this particular code base. So, all of this information, and I know that initially, because this is very small piece of code, this might look like, hey, is it this I could have figured out with a simple prompt. But again, when you have that next conversation with your AI tool, when you say, okay, I've developed something, you would want to follow all of these things that are mentioned here. You would not want to have like multiple deviations and then run into a lot of issues when you actually want to deploy it and test it. And I've seen that happening a lot. So right, key dependencies, front end testing. So it basically uses JUnit 4. If it was Python, it would have given the corresponding information and the structure.md file, which is the third file it generated. So basically, it tells me the entire project structure, that where exactly all my, so for example, where my word game logic is, where my word storage is, how the data is accessed, data models, error handling. So now, rather than me, and this is not just for the ID, but this is for me as well, that if I just want to go ahead and find out that, hey, how does the random number generation happen, I can just go ahead here and look for that information. If I want to know that, okay, how is the error being handled, I can come here. If I want to know that, okay, what is the business logic, I know where exactly to look for that information. So now when I go, so now we would also see one quick thing with this. Just a second. Yeah. So what you can also do with this particular file here is, be it the project structure or the tech, right? You can have one additional pointer here, which is basically the inclusion. So now there could be a scenario. Now this becomes very restrictive, right? That if each and every time you interact with your prompt or with your Kiro chat here, it is going to use these files always, as the additional information. You might say that, okay, I don't want to do that. I want to do something, completely freehand. What you can do is you can add a inclusion parameter, which could either be manual, basically, which means that every single time that you interact with Kiro, you say that, hey, look into the key steering files. As of now, the default behavior is that it will always be included, but you can manipulate this behavior. That's what I wanted to tell you. And you can also do a file matching pattern, which basically means that, okay, whenever you are under the src main, then only use all of these information, the steering documents. Otherwise, don't use that as well. That's also fine. So now what I can do is, now since my steering files are ready, I can just say, can you add a feature to change the 6 letter word And this is just a normal thing that you would anyway do with. And if you see, it has, because the default behavior is to include the steering documents, it has actually gone ahead and done that. So it's reading a couple of files, and now based on that, it's actually going to go ahead and give us. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel this. I don't want this. What I'm going to ask is, can you let's make it more readable. And let's wait for it to execute. Let me just close those files for now. And if you see, there's a plan that's getting generated. And this is what your spec driven development is. So if you see, this is my requirements document, and it's going to go to different phases. So requirements, design, and then the task list, right? So first thing is the requirements. And this is exactly what you would want to make it more readable, make it more clear, because this is not just for the AI, but also for yourself. That when you have these things divided and distinctly given to you as exactly this is what we need to do to reach to that last step, it makes our lives much more easier. So introduction, yes, this feature modifies the keyword games to use 5-letter words. That's exactly what I asked for. This is the user story. Now, if you are in an organization, if you are from SD and SD backgrounds, you know that these things are pretty important when you are deploying something. What are the acceptance criteria? So this is the acceptance criteria. Then again, the next user story, and so on. I'll let you read this in the time being. If you have any questions, do let me know. But next, what if you see in my chat, because I have not, I have like this requirements is now generated, which is the requirements.md file. If you see, there is no design and task list as of now, because what it is telling me is that, would you like to proceed to create the document, or do you have any feedback or changes you'd like me to make to the requirement? Now, while it has generated something based on the steering document, etc., etc. So if you see, even for these, it will use the steering document, right? Now, there could be a situation where you say that, okay, while you have said that, hey, 6-letter to 5-letter, maybe there is some other aspect to it or some other change that you've actually missed when you had explained this. Because if you see, sometimes even for normal summarization, that, oh, give me summarize this in 3 bullet points, sometimes you don't get the exact answer because you might have not written the prompt in the right way. So you might want to go ahead and cancel this and say, or maybe just say that, okay, I want to regenerate this. You can go ahead and do that. So it's not very static in nature, it's dynamic. You can have a back and forth, and you can ask Kiro to regenerate it. I'm just going to say, okay, proceed, because this looks very good to me, and I'm happy with the way this was generated. So now it's creating the design.md file, which is the second step. So requirements is done, design, and then the task list. So let's just wait for it to get created, and then we'll have a look on that as well. All right, so our design.md file is created as well. So if you see, while the overview is something that we already knew, where are the changes going to happen? So service layer, model layer, controller layer, and the data layer is where the changes happen. Right now, if you're not familiar with how these things would work in Java, because there would be some Java space specific terms as well, that's absolutely fine. All of these, have a correlating similar way of implementation in different languages as well. That's fine. It's just to give you an idea that what Kiro is doing for you. So changes in the architecture, and what are different components and interfaces. So word selection service changes. So word length constant now becomes 5. What you need to do is modify constructor to filter word list by length. And there is a select new word function, which is now to select from 5-letter words. Then again, the word list repository also changes. So there are multiple things that are going to change. There will be a word class enhancement. It's a long document, right? And interesting thing is that, of course, yes, these things will be there. You're writing the code, you're changing, but you also have to go ahead and update the error handling. If there is an invalid word length, no 5-letter words available. Then again, the testing strategy, unit test cases, integration test data. So all of these things are now added as a part of my design document. Once again, if it looks good, you go ahead and proceed. If it doesn't look good, you can go ahead and have another, you can provide the feedback that what is it that did not work for you, and again go ahead and recreate the design document. But this looks good to me, so I'm just going to say proceed. And the final thing is basically the tasks.md, which is the task list that is required to get all of these finally implemented. All right, so it has created the task list for me as well. And we have couple of tasks. So we have 5. So add word length, start task, update the word selection service, fix word list. So again, since you are not very, very familiar with this code base at this point, just know that, well, it has created the tasks for me. And I can just say, okay, start executing, because all of these tasks looks pretty much good to me. And I know that this is exactly what I wanted. So I'm just say, okay, start executing. And now if you see, the task is in progress, the execution is in progress. And rather than changing everything at a go, right? So I'm not going to say that, oh, update everything, because that gets messy and tracking is very difficult, especially if you're working with very, very large code bases. You can just go ahead and view the changes as well. All right, so this is now done. Our second task is in progress. And you can, of course, come back here for a summary of in which file, what does it look like. And this is something that you must have seen multiple times already. But yeah, I'll let it execute one by one. All right, so let's let it execute. And again, if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. Yes, Devajyoti, you have a question?
Yeah. So in Chat GPT, right, we have the option of either going and reviewing the code before like putting it inside whatever changes it has suggested, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here I can see once you will see given the suggestion to proceed, right, it will go and automatically have the changes incorporated in the code, right? So what if there are some changes suggested over here which doesn't align with my exact requirement or what I'm looking for? In that case, do we have any get whereby we can verify that before adding those changes, or it will every time it will just go and automatically push those changes to the code?
So pushing the code to a remote repo is a different thing, right? Here, if you see, everything is local. There's nothing that
Yeah,
has.
yeah. Since I was talking about locally only,
Mhm.
instead of here the changes that has been proposed over here,
Mhm.
it's actually going and adding those changes locally only. But do we have any option where we can verify those changes before adding them over there, like we have in chat gpt, right? It will have the option of either put it in and like add those changes in the code, or you can go and verify it once you are good with everything, and then decide whether you should proceed or not.
Right. So two answers to that question. So first of all, if you see, we have not gone into agent hooks yet, but if you see, what we have done is we modified a file, and you can always have an agent hook. Let me just start with that conversation already, because this was the next thing that I was going to talk about. So if you see here, what we are saying is that, hey, anytime your file changes, you should take a follow-up action. Now, this event could basically be a file getting saved, changed, modified, and here you can have all of those things that you want Kiro to do for you, or your AI to do every single time you make a change to a file. Here we are seeing a big change, because we asked that, hey, go ahead and change that 6 letter to 5 letters, and it has to like make several changes, right? It's not one change. There's a lot of files that have been changed here. Even for smaller changes, 1 file, 2 file, 3 file, you can go ahead and have an hook. Just say that, okay, maybe update the documentation, go ahead and update the unit test case, go ahead and do some this validation, do the one example that I gave you, right, which was the pre-commit scan. So anything that you want to do before you go ahead and say that, hey, this is an actually working code, and I should, before you go ahead and actually deploy it somewhere, or you don't want to like manually go ahead and have that repetitive process of running those same things multiple times. Now this can be very very much flexible, because for some things you just might want to run some security scan, for some you might just want to update the documentation, some maybe a test case, check whether the things are working or not, and that's where your agent hook comes into picture. So you can automatically trigger that follow-up action that happens whenever you are doing something with the file. In our case, there are multiple files that have been changed here, and of course there's a revert changes option as well. Here we have made a lot of changes, might not be the best practice. If you ask me, what I've seen that really works seamlessly, especially with big project basis, anything that changes more than 5 files, you should not do it at a go. More than 5 files, it's a no for me. I'll always start small. Any feature that, or any small change that works with 1 or 2 files, 3 files, 4 files, that's good for me. And that makes it easier to revert and of course execute something like this. So yes, you have that option where you can create that agent hook and execute something based on whenever something has changed.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So yes, agent hooks was one other thing that I wanted to show, but I think I've shown it already. And one other thing which I wanted to show you, which I have already configured, just for the time you can have your MCP setup as well. So let me just try to close all of this and probably have a new session here to make it look more clear. Yes, Somirip?
So regarding this MCP, we can integrate other MCP servers as well in this ID, right? Right,
Yes.
like means Docker or anything
Anything,
Kubernetes.
anything, anything.
Okay.
Be it that's already there from AWS, from anyone else, your own MCP servers. Of course, what I've done here is the AWS docs is added. And why I added this, because this is the most common one when you go ahead and deploy something on AWS, you would want to know some best practices, etc. So how do you invoke this? So if you see, there is a hashtag command here where you can have include files, code base, code docs. There's a lot of different things, but you have something called MCP here as well. And since I have added the AWS documentation MCP server here, what I can just say is that probably read documentation, search documentation, or recommend. And I can just use this recommend and ask some simple questions like, how can I host a web app on AWS where I expect probably uh, is basically my traffic is not stable in nature. So I mean, since I'm in this code base right now, it's taking this steering document, but this is not needed right now. I could have just made it conditional. This code base has nothing to do with AWS, so I think it's trying to look at in that direction. But of course, these steering documents are not required here. But again, yes, any MCP server that you want to connect to, you have your mcp.json file. It's under the .kiro settings folder, and you can add as many as you like, or whichever is relevant for you at that point of time, what you're working on. Let me also show you a couple of things. Let me just reshare my screen because I want to show you the documentation page as well for Kiro, because there's a lot of information that it's very difficult to just discuss while we are speaking, but it's easier for me to show you that through the documentation as well. So I hope you are able to see. Do you see the Kiro documentation page? Can someone confirm?
Yes.
All right. So I put the link to this in chat as well, but it's pretty simple. It's kiro.dev. And if you have not joined the waitlist already, you can go ahead and join it. What would be interesting for you to know, of course, the pricing, which again, as I was showing, rather there are different tiers. So the free version, Pro, Pro Plus, Pro Power, which I've already shown. But where things will get interesting is the documentation, because all of the things that we have spoken about so far, the agent hooks, the steering documents, spec driven development, MCP integration, all of those are mentioned in a very, very good way. There are sample screenshots as well, and there is one what I wanted to show you. Yes, so if you are interested in, not integrating with your code base, you just want to test it out, there is a learn by playing option as well, where you can just go ahead and use Kiro to complete the tasks in the code base, which is already available here. So it's basically a game that was developed. It's called Spirit of Kiro. You can go ahead and use this, and yeah, there are all the steps are mentioned here. uh, Basically, if you see, so how you set up the environment, how do you fix the error, and again use MCP, agent hooks, all the different things that we have spoken about so far, all of those things are mentioned. And it's an easy way to learn, because see, when I show you something, well, visually, so it's all theory because you're seeing what I'm doing, but of course when you do it hands on, it makes it much more easier for you to get to know what Kiro can offer and test it out. I know that there's a wait list that comes at the next question, that hey, I'm interested to test it out, but there's a wait list. So just hold on. I know that you'll get the access definitely. And I think there is one code with Kiro hackathon going on. Unfortunately, if you do not have access to it, you can't use it. But and of course, this session happened very, very late, because I think the submission date for this is probably in next 2 days, right? So 25th August. But in case someone already gets the access, do try to uh, enter this hackathon. Probably I'll just give the link to this to you as well. But there's a great price if you see, and yeah, there is a hackathon. So if you're interested, if you have something interesting, the details are here. I mean, how you can enter, what exactly do you need to do. But it's all about going from idea to production, bringing out use cases, interesting use cases, and see how you can build them with Kiro. So yeah, that's most things about Kiro. Again, there are some small things, but I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information. So I'll just stop sharing my screen, give you the link to this as well. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you have additional questions while you use it. If you don't have those questions now, because now you're just looking at what I'm doing, if you want to ask something later, that's also fine. Would be more than happy to answer them. Yes, Soumya, please ask your question.
So Kiro is integrated. Kiro can be integrated means with most popular SDLC tools like Jira's ServiceNow. Means is there any kind of iterations going on? Means those means enhancements will be seen going forward.
So what I have seen, and I have done this for one of, I was just testing it out. What I did was I used some MCP servers to get this done. Native integration, probably not at this point. I'm not sure if there is something in roadmap. I'm not really sure of that. But I've seen people using different MCP servers to, have that communication, and, go ahead and probably create a Jira ticket, things like that. Yeah, I've seen that being done. but through MCP.
Okay, and means can you please share your screen to just navigate to that particular ID once?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Uh, oh, okay. Can you just navigate to the extensions uh, on the bottom left
But to which one?
in the extension?
Ah, okay, extensions. Yeah.
Okay, so means likewise VS Code we can
Yes,
install any plugins.
absolutely, absolutely. So if you look for Docker, it's pretty much same what you have seen in VS Code. There's no, and that's why I mentioned that one slide where you can do the migration as well. So let me try to find out that link in the documentation. Give me a second. So I'm just putting that on our chat here. How you can migrate from VS Code to Kiro. It's nothing new. See, couple of things might be new like agent hooks, MCP, etc. But other than that, these things you've already seen. Your source control, run and debug. These things have already been there, and you've seen it multiple times. So nothing new here. So you can migrate your profile settings, right? All of those things you can migrate. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, Soumyadeep.
So just means curious to understand, Pallavi. Let's say in a VS Code we can use it as a free tool, right? Means we can install anywhere inside client environment, outside that. Now Kiro comes with a cost. Means there is a free, there is a pro. Means from the Kiro point of view, or means how it will ensure the cost of optimization. Means if I want to integrate Kiro with my client environment, then how can I convince client that okay, yeah, you can't use VB, means VS Code is also there, but you can also access Kiro.
Right. So see, whenever you go ahead and do some kind of evaluation on why you should use X and why you should use Y, all of the things that we have spoken about, and we were having a conversation about Kiro, those features you might not see in VS Code. You can have an extension of Amazon Q, but then these things would not work. And you have a free tier, yes, but then there might be a limitation on the number of requests that you can make, right? So that will be a challenge. You can start from that, but then when you see that hey, you are pretty much liking it, uh, and what free tier offers is not sufficient for you in the long run, you yourself become the judge of it, right? So you don't need anyone else coming and telling you that hey, why should you go ahead and use this, why should you pay for something, or it's more like any other tool, right? So any other AI tool that you might be using as of this point, everything has a free tier and it says there's a pro version which has a cost. Now maybe you use the free tier for months and then you realize that hey, it's very good and it's actually helping me. Probably it's good for me at this point to invest for a pro tier. So decision again here works in the same way, that if you have to tell someone that okay, there is a free version versus this version, there must be something more that you are getting here, and if it's really worth the investment. Yes, Devajyoti.
Yeah. One last question. So, just like in, I'm just trying to, find the similarity with ChatGPT. So here in ChatGPT, we have something this means the code suggestions it provides, right? So as per their documentation, they have this codex API model, like it was trained with the public source code, right? Is it the same for Kiro also, like while giving us the suggestions, right? So means how the internal models like have been tuned, like have been pre-trained. Is it
Yeah.
with the public source code?
So in any case, any generative AI tool, LLM that you use, LLMs are trained on some training data, which is basically, think of it so nice. So here we have a subset of it which is more on the code generation, right? Even if I give you an example of Amazon Q, now you have an option to select between the Claude Sonnet models 3.7 and 4. Why Claude Sonnet? Because Claude Sonnet has really performed well when it comes to reasoning, which is very very essential part of writing code, understanding code, and giving you some kind of suggestion. So, coming back to your question that hey, different models or what exactly you are going to use. Yes, when these models have been trained, they have been trained on this internet size data and maybe some proprietary data which you would not see in the internet. If you ask me what data this is, probably I would also not know because I was not involved in the part of the training. But there are different training sets. Some, yes, are available on the internet, some are not available on the internet, they could be proprietary. So that becomes a differentiating factor. So if you take Anthropic Claude versus some other model, you might see the difference in the way the code is generated because that's the way it was trained and the kind of data that was provided to it while the training happened. So yes, it's public data and it's public private data as well.
What if, like, in case of just trying to understand, like, about security, like,
Hmm.
suppose I'm trying to, like I'm working with my source code and like
Hmm.
trying to, generate or trying to get some insights or on some code, like which involves, like secrets or, like maybe API credentials or something like that. Means suppose someone mistakenly put those information, right? So is it something, there some process there which goes and, like in other LLMs also I have seen, right? Like they will, remove it, or, like there are some things like which, which doesn't actually make it public, or, which will remove it from the, which doesn't go and, permanently store those information in their servers. So in that case,
Got
like, is
it.
it something similar over here also?
Yes, so what you would see as a common trend, not just here, but I have seen this across the industry at this point. Anything that's free for you to use, there's a good chance that it. So essentially, what companies have or organizations will always have a trouble with, that the interactions that I'm using or what I'm providing as a code, as a prompt. And again, let's forget about the fact whether it has personal or PII date kind of data or not. It's more about, yeah, it's my proprietary code, it's my information, whether this is being used for training the model or not. That's the essential question that everyone would ask. And what
Right.
you would see as a common trend, that anywhere that something is free, it might have that caveat that hey, it can be used for the model training or making the model better. Anytime you use something pro, you might not see that coming around. So it might give you that benefit as well, which I think somebody was asking that, okay, free version versus the paid version. This is also one of the differences that you would see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Somit, if you have another question,
Yeah, I might asking two questions.
no, no, please go ahead.
Uh, so basically, just curious to understand that what is the underlying means. What are the underlying LLM used to develop this Kiro? Means is it multi LLM models, right? Means Claude Sonnet, GPT-5, and other has been integrated.
Yeah, that's
Means just curious to know. It's just out of the context. Might be.
See, the way, if you have used AWS or you have seen the way that AWS, generative AI or AI stack in AWS is, right? If you are using these kind of tools like Amazon Q, Kiro, which basically lie at the topmost layer, all of these details are abstracted, which basically means that you go and when you ask a question, well, now there are some options where you can select like Claude Sonnet 3.7 or 4. But the idea was that, hey, you as a customer or me as a customer who just wants to get the best code or best recommendation doesn't need to worry about which model is being used. So there was a time when there were multiple models in the backend, and based on the kind of question or based on the kind of capability that you're requiring, it went and and these were changing over time as well. So there would not be a one fixed answer to this. If you feel like, hey, I want to have the flexibility that the certain LM works for me, and probably this is what I want to have in a production grade application, that's when you use something like Bedrock. As I said, Claude models have been.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, why I'm asking this question be because the thing is that whenever we want any prompt in let's say Amazon Q or Copilot in the VS Code extension,
Mhm.
then we can select let's say GPT-5, Claude Sonnet 3.7 or 4, and here Kiro the means the unique feature is that it is we are not getting selected to a specific LLM model. We just means we just entering everything in prompt, and it is getting outputted via means either the code or either it is generating some of the readme.md5 files.
So
Okay,
yeah, so I have that option disabled here, but again, the same thing would work here.
okay,
So it's
got it.
3.7 or 4 clots on it.
Okay,
That's what
okay,
it's going to use. Yeah.
okay. And my second question is that means okay, just a moment. Means means it's my last question probably. So let's say that I'm dealing with AWS Secret Manager or any kind of means HashiCorp Vault with Kiro. So I means how Kiro will ensure that all of my credential will be hide means while I'm doing any kind of vault regarding or means to be basically ensures secrets.
So is it the same question regarding model training, or your information being shared with uh, the model provider? That's the question.
No, the thing is that means let's say let's say I am working in a client project on where means AWS secret manager is there, and means each and every time it fetch the secrets. So is there any kind of mechanism behind Kiro that means it will hide the secrets?
Hide secret when you are, so again, when we talk about secrets manager, the idea is that secret is somewhere in secrets manager, and you just make an API call to that. So anywhere your secret is not directly exposed. What is it that you want to have in Kiro, or what is it that you're expecting Kiro to have? Because it still would be in runtime if something is in secrets manager, right?
Okay, got it. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, in any case, when you use something like Secrets Manager, you're basically, the idea is you're not going to hard code that information in your code. So even if you're executing something, it's still in Secrets
Yeah, yeah.
Manager.
Actually, I'm just asking that how Kiro is basically ensuring data security and data integrity. Means so there are most of finance customers means finance client or let's say any banking clients. So means how Kiro is ensuring data privacy or data integrity.
Okay.
That's
So when we do speak to regulated customers in regulated industries, couple of things would be mandatory, like encryption, logging, couple of things, right? So all of these things are available in Kiro. Let me share something with you. Uh, and of course, you can reach back to me if those things don't make sense to you, or you are looking for something more than this. But I just put something on the chat. So this is regarding the privacy and security in Kiro. So basically talks about trusted commands that you can add, the encryption, things like that, right? So data protection, how do you do the monitoring, tracking, how you can use VPC endpoints, things like that. So all that information is in the link which I've shared.